Welcome to Utah Stories. So today on the program, we're examining the question, can tiny homes solve the affordable housing crisis we find ourselves in? It's especially bad here in Utah. We have absolutely no affordable housing. If you want to buy a house right now, I keep a constant alert on Zillow. It is about you can get something as cheap as 400,000. I'm going to show it on my screen right now. This is $399,000. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,000-square-foot house. Look at that thing. It's teeny tiny. That's the very best you can do for affordable housing. Just a little less than $500,000. Here's something that's a little bit nicer at 450. It's still just barely over 1,000 square feet. 2 beds. I bet those bedrooms are just teensy. So why is housing so unaffordable? We were hoping to talk to Steve Waldrop. He is the housing czar for the state of Utah. He was appointed by Governor Spencer Cox to basically address the whole problem of affordable housing. I heard Governor Cox speak about a week and a half ago. He says his 2 main priorities right now are housing accessibility, both in terms of ownership and renting, and solving the homeless problem. So why is housing so unaffordable, especially here in Utah? I found a pretty interesting chart on Axios. I'll show that on the screen. This is basically it. I mean, whenever you look at price increase, of course, it's a function of supply and demand. We have far too little supply and way more demand. So this chart basically just shows existing housing units relative to population demand in the United States, the entire demand in the United States. And you can see that we're short 3.2 million if we wanted to be above water in terms of supply meeting demand. So there's 3.2 million people who want to get in, households who want to get into homes who can't because there's just not enough. So what's Utah doing about it? So Governor Spencer Cox said he wants to do everything he can possible to make housing affordable once again in Utah, because this greatly affects our lifestyle here in Utah. If you didn't know, we have the highest birth rate in the nation. We have more kids. You can't have kids if you don't have room in your home to have kids. So it's just really affecting the lifestyle. And I know a lot of people who are kind of stuck in this like renter world who really want to get out of it. But there are really some easy solutions to this problem. I mean, there's some really no-brainer solutions. We have so much land here in Utah, and so I want to get into that in this program. Thank you for joining me. Before I dive in, I want to tell you about our new issue of Utah Stories magazine. It's hot off the press. It's our June issue. It's a really fun issue where we examine food in Utah. And one of my favorite farmers is Bangerter Farms in Bountiful. Bountiful is this hotbed for real estate. It's like lots of pricey homes, but this family has hung on, and they are so cool. They incorporate all of the neighborhood kids to come and work on the farm. They have a great farm program for the kids around the neighborhood, and they just keep going. We've got a story about farming indoors. We've got stories about where did all the water go? Why the Great Salt Lake's drying up? Is it by design? I mean, we have so many developers here in Utah that don't want to tell you what they're actually doing. Is that by design? And I also address the chronic disease epidemic that we have here in our country. Why is that happening? I think it has something to do with our food nutrition. Our food nutrition in the United States is some of the poorest in the whole world, and we have chronic diseases blowing up. In the past 10 years, chronic childhood asthma, childhood diabetes, childhood obesity have all gone through the roof, ADD, ADHD. This is affecting our kids, and it definitely has a lot to do with what you're feeding them. So go pick it up or subscribe to the magazine. It's just $3 a month, and you can do that by going to utahstories.com or subscribe to our free digital newsletter for free. Okay, So affordable housing in Utah, how and why did it get to crisis levels? So what happened, from what I've seen, is after we had the housing bubble in 2006 and 7, we had way too much housing on the market, and there was not enough buyers. A lot of properties went into foreclosure. They did all these measures to get rid of this surplus inventory, including allowing investment banks to just buy single-family homes. And I think that is the single worst decision that Congress has ever made for homeowners, to allow BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, all of these giant investment groups to come into communities and buy single-family homes. That should have never been allowed. The only people who should be allowed to buy homes are individuals. I don't care if you're from California and you want to buy a second property in Utah, that's fine. But that's an individual. That's an individual buyer. To say that one single company can come into a market and buy 300 homes. I learned from a realtor friend in Sugar House when the housing market was just blowing up prior to COVID. Every single home on the market, there'd be 20 people bidding on it. It was just insanity. I said, how many of these properties are getting picked up by like investment groups? And she said, oh, most of them. She said about 25%. The ones who are winning the most at that time were investment groups. And so I found out 1 out of every 4 properties sold during the time when we saw the huge spike in real estate prices was BlackRock Capital, giant investment groups, and taking that supply out of the market and giving it to giant investment companies obviously had a huge impact. Also, builders just weren't building as much. The housing inventory, they were afraid to build. They were afraid of another housing bubble. So there just was a real dearth of housing being built. And we were as I was pointing out in the magazine, it's something we point out often, we're building over our best farmland in Utah. We're building over the land that has a much higher and better use than just simply parking townhomes and condos on it. We need to consider how we grow in the state of Utah. We're kind of boxed in the Wasatch Front by the Oquirrh Mountains, but just beyond the Oquirrh Mountains, you have the Tooele Valley, which is this huge valley, and beyond there's another valley, the Skull Valley. But even though that's a lush, beautiful valley, if we had a train system that could go through the Oquirrh Mountains and that could access land that's nearby, I think that could dramatically reduce home prices. But the other question I wanted to look at is, why are tiny homes the solution? A lot of people think that if we just build more tiny homes, we will get ourselves a new kind of first-time home buyer program. And I found an interesting article here on U.S. News and World Report. I'll show that on the screen. This just kind of gives an overview of tiny homes, that the median home price in the United States in 2023 was right around $412,000. Nobody can afford that unless you're making about $120,000. That's just out of reach for most Americans. About 80% of Americans cannot afford a home anymore. Why tiny homes would be a great alternative? Because they're 400 to 650 square feet. They can be prefabricated. They can be containers. The building costs are much, much cheaper. They could be built on an assembly line instead of on site. It doesn't have to be based on the labor costs of the area. And it just seems like a great first-time homebuyer program. And so they've tried these tiny home communities. They tried one in Tampa Bay, the Oaks, where home prices were starting in the tiny home village for $159,000. And that's $470,000 than she would have paid. So it was much, much more affordable to go tiny and go smaller. And property taxes are way cheaper. The HO fees are way less. And so why are we not doing more of this? That's the question. And I can tell you it in one word. It's NIMBYism. NIMBYism is the idea not in my backyard, NIMBY. If I go to Murray, where I live, I see all these empty lots, these huge lots, perfect places to build tiny home communities, perfect places to build starter homes that could be less than $150,000. Why would they never build them there? Because they'd have to change the zoning laws. They'd have to be able to say, okay, we're going to take a regular lot, and the lot sizes there, I think, are about half an acre, and we're going to put 12 tiny homes on that lot. What would the neighbors do? They'd be up in arms. Oh, no. We can't let that happen. No way. We can't do that. Why would they do that? Because, of course, it could possibly affect their real estate prices. It could bring the price of their home value down. Because anytime you're next to a more affordable area, you're gonna basically see your property value devaluate. And in the meantime, a lot of my neighbors in Murray have their kids still living with them who are in their late 20s and 30s, and they don't somehow correlate the two notions together. That their ideas of just never build anything affordable in my backyard, nothing low income near me. They don't associate that with their kids living in their backyard or in their their basements. And then, and I have a neighbor right over the fence from me, and he's a great guy, but he's got two 30-year-old children living with him. And then I got another neighbor on the front, and he's also got 30-year-old children living with him. And it's the same story. They can't afford housing. They'd rather save their money and have a nicer car, have more disposable income to spend at the awesome bars and restaurants we have in Salt Lake City. And so it's just, they're just not connecting the dots. Like, you don't want anything affordable near your home, but it could go to your kids. So we need to stop being NIMBYs. That's really what it comes down to. That's the only way we're going to solve the housing affordability problem. When I just heard from my aunt on a family reunion, my great aunt, my deceased grandfather's sister, a really cool story about my great grandmother. She was very business oriented, business minded. She had to raise 9 children in the early 1900s. And in 1910, they bought a farmland in Murray, Utah. They were very, very poor immigrants from Armenia. And they bought this land, and the first way she was able to set aside money and get extra money from what they were earning, which was not a lot because my great-grandfather was a ditch digger, was she parceled out part of her farm and started building these shacks, had these little shacks built. And then she was able to rent these little shacks to other poor immigrants who were just getting started in the United States. That was affordable housing solved. Those were tiny homes. That was, like, this idea is not new. This idea could absolutely be pulled off with people who have big backyards or people who have, farms where they're not farming some of it. They could put in some tiny homes, and it absolutely would never be allowed under current zoning restrictions. So that's where I see the problem lies. We don't need to be subsidizing developers. I mean, I look at Zillow and I look at all the affordable housing. None of the so-called affordable housing subsidies that are going to developers are producing affordable housing. It's just free money for developers. Our state of Utah, our legislature, I saw a really great meme. It was so perfect. The state legislature is the side hustle for the developers in Utah. I mean, that's basically what the state legislature is. It's their side hustle. They can pass laws and regulations to help them fast track their projects and pad their pockets. That's what it is. They don't want, I mean, I'm not going to say they don't want to solve the problem, but that is the crux of the issue. So thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a special event I want to tell you about that is so much fun. It was a blast. This picture is with me and Brian Higgins, the winner from last month. He told the most amazing story. He won $100. We had so many great storytellers. I think the great storytellers of Utah are starting to learn about this event. And we want to have more storytellers. We want to sell out this event. If we get this event sold out, I want to offer a $200 prize instead of a $100 prize to the winner. So we only have, I believe we only have 30 or 40 tickets available, and we've already sold quite a few. So if you want to go to utahstories.com, you can reserve your seat. It's a great deal. It's $10, which includes $10 towards a crepe at Dally Crepes. They are the best crepes in Utah. They are seriously amazing crepes. And it's June 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. So mark your calendars and come and really have a great time. It was super fun. All right, with that, if you like this content, please hit that like button. It really helps us out. Please leave a comment. That helps us out too. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. And subscribe to our free digital newsletter. Pay $3 a month. Get the magazine delivered to your door. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.